You can very confidently say that it's true to say that there's two kinds of people in the world. There's people who divide all the people of the world into two groups, and there's people that don't. It is somewhat more complicated to divide all of the religions of the world into two groups, but for conversation's sake, I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. Every world religion attempts to make sense of our experience of the world through certain beliefs and rituals. Now, it's never a clean break, but religions tend to view time in one of two ways. Generally speaking, the religions of the Eastern world tend to think of time as being circular, moving through repeating patterns. And the religions of the West tend to think of time as being linear, going from creation to some kind of end. Belief in reincarnation tends to be more prevalent in Eastern religions, is the belief that you get multiple shots at life. And believing that you get lots of chances kind of takes the urgency out of it. You don't have to be afraid of going to hell for eternity. You might be concerned that you could come back as a cockroach next time, but even then, if you try to be a really good cockroach, you have a shot at coming back as something more interesting, a dolphin or an eagle. Religions that have a linear view of time view life more like shooting an arrow. The moment that the arrow is released, whatever it's pointed at, is where it goes for eternity. The moment of death, you are going to go forever. So we Jews, Christians, and Muslims believe. That belief makes us a whole lot more concerned about the afterlife, guilt, and sin than Eastern religions are. Eastern religions tend to actually talk about afterlife fairly rarely. It just is not a primary concern for them, as it has been historically for Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Now, even that's not universal. In the reading that Tanner just did for us, the prophet Isaiah is saying to people, all people are like grass. The historical ancient Jews did not believe in an afterlife. They would say very clearly, you're just like the grass in the field. You've got a season to live and then you don't live anymore, but God's word gets to live forever. I don't know if that's supposed to make you feel better, but somehow don't worry about the fact that you're finite, God's word is going to last. But this is, of course, a generalization. There are aspects of linear eternity in Eastern religions, and there are aspects of a circular view of time in Western religions. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all have a more or less annual calendar. Jews and Christian calendars are based on a lunar calendar, but they are corrected by the summer and winter equinox or solstice and spring and fall equinox. The Muslim calendar is a lunar calendar only. It is not corrected by solar equinox or solstice. And so a 12-month lunar calendar only has 354 days in it. So Muslim holidays based on a 12-month calendar of a lunar nature has to move, and it moves backwards by, what would that be, 10 and a quarter days a year. So Ramadan will move over a period of years from spring to winter to fall and then summer. This year, Ramadan started on June 29th. Next year, it will start on June 18th. So every 30 years or so, Ramadan, Passover, and Easter end up being celebrated at the same time. And I'm sure that there's someone in a marketing department of retail stores right now trying to figure out how to exploit the fact that all three major Western religions will sometime around 2021 be celebrating their major religious holidays at the same time. Just remember, in 2021, you heard it first right here. So which religious view of time is correct? Is time linear or is it circular. It's not hard to find evidence in nature for either one. Trees lose their leaves in the fall, but they get new leaves in the spring. Our flowers and farm fields appear to die every winter, and then they come back to life in the spring. The earth itself grows dark and cold, and then comes back to longer days and warmer weather. It gets dark at night, and the sun rises the next day. We go to sleep. We wake up. We even get sick, and then we get better. The ancient Hebrews didn't have a notion of soul. They had what they called the nephesh, which Christians tend to think of as soul, but that's not what they really meant. Nephesh was really like the life force, so that when you got sick, your nephesh is diminished, but when you get better, it recovers. And so there's an undulation even in the strength of your life force. But we also see very linear aspects to the world. A tree will lose its leaves and get new leaves in the spring for several years, but eventually they all do die, except for the ficus tree in my living room. It's going to drop leaves for the rest of time. When we are young, all of our teeth fall out, and we grow a whole new set. But when those fall out, Mother Nature doesn't really have a good answer for you. We grow old, and we die. And though many people may have strong personal beliefs about their conscience living on in another form, what we see, what we actually experience, is that they die, and though they may be living in a heavenly mansion on streets of gold, they won't be showing up at the house for Christmas dinner this year. There are aspects of time that are circular, and there are other aspects of time that are purely linear. Sometimes that line is fairly short, like the lifespan of a single individual, or it can be fairly long, like the lifespan of a species, such as the dinosaurs or jellyfish that appear to be able to live through every kind of ecological disaster. Now, I apologize for taking so much time for this introduction, but it does draw us into closer community, because by now all of our internet audience will have stopped listening. So now it's just us. It's just us. And it's okay with me if on your way to the parking lot you forget that a lunar calendar only has 354 days. You don't really have to know that for a fact. Just understand that it's a little bit different. The larger point for me at this time in history is that both types of religious descriptions of time have within them a core deception that is dangerous to us. If you believe that life is always circling around in ever-repeating cycles, then you can be relatively indifferent about what you are doing in this life, assuming that you have a virtually infinite number of second chances, when reality may be better symbolized in how many complete sets of teeth you have reason to believe that you're going to grow. And in a linear view of time that ends up in either heaven or hell for all of eternity, there can also be some very deceptive implications. People will deny themselves the very joy of living this life, either out of fear of eternal punishment or out of some kind of lust for eternal reward, neither of which is known to exist outside of religious imagination. Soldiers of all religious stripes have marched into the jaws of death under the promise of unimaginable reward in an afterlife. Perhaps even more deceptively, our current marriage of evangelical Christianity to politics and the corporations that profit from coal and oil are destroying the earth in a lust for current profits that are backed up with an absurd religious assurance that Jesus will come back and usher in the kingdom before the earth itself becomes uninhabitable. When the new Republican majority takes over in the Senate next month, Oklahoma Senator James Inhofe will be the chair of the Senate's Environmental Committee. Yeah. Inhofe has repeatedly rejected climate change science, and in 2012 he was defending coal and oil interests on the Senate floor, quoting the Bible. And he said, "My point is this: God is still up there. The arrogance of people who think that we human beings would be able to change what God is doing in the climate is outrageous." So you see, a religious perspective on time itself can change the way you act and the way you vote, the way you live out your life, the way you consume energy on the earth. We are capable at this point in history of switching from coal and oil to solar and wind generated energy. We can do it. The technology exists. And if we simply, you know how many jobs are going to be created by the XL Keystone Pipeline? Permanent jobs will be about 30. And we are willing to place at risk nearly half of the potable water in the United States under the assumption that we're going to create a lot of jobs. We're going to create a handful of jobs, not enough to employ our own church members. Those of you that still want a job, I understand pension changes the perspective on employment. I don't want to scare you with thinking you're going to have to go to work on a pipeline. But we make choices based on a really misinformed worldview. And unfortunately, religion and politics and corporations are in a pretty sick triangle of love in which they are misinforming the public and making the earth itself rather uninhabitable. Now, it makes you wonder how our neighbors to the west could continue to re-elect Inhofe to the Senate. But Missouri, where we live, I don't know that we can say that we're a great example of intelligent voting. And I come from Kentucky, and I can't really tell you that Kentucky is the Mensa Club capital of the world anymore based on who they're sending to the Senate. But this is serious. Our denial of fact by religion, corporations, and governments is lethal. It is killing. Well, it's not killing the planet. The planet's going to survive. The planet will survive. The planet will not support human life. So in that sense, we are killing ourselves. My favorite TV show is HBO's The Newsroom. It's like crack cocaine to me, ladies and gentlemen. When they post a new episode of that show, and Heather, forgive me for asking you to stop talking. Nothing can happen when I'm listening to The Newsroom. In fact, there is a fictional character in it that if I could become someone, little boys and girls always have a superhero or a Disney princess that they would like to be, but I would like to be Will McAvoy. I would like to be him. That's exactly that truth-telling, courageous, prophetic newscaster. I love him. But in a recent episode, Will McAvoy gets set back on his own rump while interviewing a fictitious EPA executive who, in a very deadpan manner, is basically saying, we've already put so much carbon in the air that the ability for human life to go on is over. That we could stop burning gas, we could stop burning coal today, and it wouldn't make any difference. He predicted that the child has already been born who will die from a cataclysmic collapse of the environment, and that within the foreseeable future, sea levels could rise by as much as 80 feet. And the point of this particular episode was that you can make an announcement on a network news station that the world itself is going to come to an end in the foreseeable future, and that everyone just goes on with their lives. That it draws a collective yawn. Now, thankfully, it was a fictional TV show and not a documentary. But the truth is that we have done enough damage to our environment that even if we never started our gas-burning cars again, if we never burned another lump of coal in our power plants, over the next few generations, sea levels will rise, not by 80 feet, but by 4 or 5 feet, which will make many of our coastal cities, many of our favorite vacation spots, available only to those of us who are certified scuba divers. This will cause mass migrations as millions of people have to move inland away from the coast. It will create economic woes of potentially cataclysmic proportions, and there is nothing that we can do to stop it. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't start trying to live smarter now. Many island nations will disappear. Many coastal cities will be underwater, but there will still be arable land. We're not on our way to that horrible movie Waterworld. It's not quite so bad as that, but it's bad. The world's major religions, the world's most powerful governments, and the world's largest corporations have all been guilty of treating environmental scientists as if they were all Chicken Little going around screaming hysterically that the sky is falling. Now, it's too late to keep the sky from falling, because time really is linear, with my apologies to Eastern religions. Time is linear. It goes in one direction, and we cannot undo it, and there's not a second chance. It's been going in the wrong direction for nearly a century now. Many of us were guilty of using our credit cards when we were young as if our future was always so bright, that we were always going to make more money, and that the debt we created in our youth wouldn't matter to us when we got older. But in fact, we had to learn some tough lessons. We had to make some draconian cuts in our lifestyle in order to get on top of the imprudent mistakes that we made when we were young. Our relationship with the environment is no different. We have foolishly believed that our careless stewardship of the earth would always be corrected by a new wave of technology, and if not something salvific out of the scientists and inventors whose warnings we have so casually ignored, then at least God would step in and wind the clock back for us. The sobering message of progressive faith is that the Messiah we have been waiting for is looking back at us from the mirror every morning. We are the ones that we have been waiting for to bring salvation. The people who can change the world for the better, who can lessen the impact of past mistakes and set the course of time in the right direction, have already been born, and in fact, they all decided to go to church this morning. Let's hope that their spirituality is substantive enough to make real change in the course of history while we still have a breath of an opportunity.
You have been watching a progressive Christian video from the Community Christian Church of Springfield, Missouri. We encourage our viewers to donate to our efforts in feeding the homeless and hungry of our community. Write to us at Reverend Dr. Ray at AOL.com for more information.